Udah sekarang ya.
Hello and welcome to our today's talk, our online shared public program for our project Collecting Entanglements and Embodied Histories, which is a dialogue between 4 curators, which are Grace Sambo, Kritia Gavivong, June Jap, and myself. And the collection we've chosen to work with, which are the Galerie Nationale Indonesia in Jakarta, the Maya Contemporary Art Museum in Chiang Mai, the Singapore Art Museum in Singapore, and the Hamburger Bahnhof, which is the branch for contemporary art of the Nationalgalerie in Berlin. And we have every month a shared public online program on the last Thursday of each month. And today I'm delighted to welcome our participants on today's subject, which is Käthe Kollwitz and the power of art. And I'm going to introduce our valued speakers now, and after this, all of them will give a short a presentation, and then I hope that we have a very lively discussion or conversation among of us, and all our audience who is listening to us, everybody who's joining us today for the online program is also welcome to submit questions or comments or whatever in the comment part of Facebook or YouTube, and we will at the end answer these questions. So let me start by introducing our speakers in the order of how they are going to do their presentation, and I start with Lim Cheng Chiu, who writes about history and popular culture in Singapore, and his articles on comic art and political prints have appeared in the Southeast Asian Journal of Social Science, in the Journal of Popular Culture, and Print Quarterly. He is the country editor for Singapore for the International Journal of Comic Art. He is also one of the co-authors of the University Socialist Club and the contest for the International Journal of Comic Art, and he's one of the co-authors of the University's Social Club and the Contest of Malaya, Tangled Strands of Modernity by Amsterdam University Press. And most recently, he already spoke about the work of Käthe Kollwitz, for example, in the program Print in Action, at the Singapore National Gallery, a program that explored how modern printmaking has activated invisible communities in the Netherlands, in Singapore and China from 1930 to the present. And there he discussed the art of print and its attendant politics. And you can also find a lot of his writing online and academics, for example, which I would like to suggest to look up. Our second speaker for today is Tisna Sanjaya. We usually speak in German because Tisna's German is very well, better than my non-existing Bahasa. And Tisna was born in Bandung, Indonesia, and he studied art at the undergraduate program of the Faculty of Fine Arts and Design at the Goethe-Institut of Technology. He graduated with a Diplom für Bildende Kunst and was a Meisterschüler at the Hochschule für Bildende Künste in Braunschweig in Germany. And he graduated from the doctorate program at the Indonesian Art Institute in Yogyakarta, and since 1989, Tisna also worked as a lecturer at the Bandung Institute of Technology's Faculty of Art and Design. And Tisna uses a variety of mediums in his works, including etching, prints, installation, and performance. His works respond to events that occur around him in the personal as well as in the social and political spheres. And Tisner has received various awards, and his most recent solo exhibition was held at the Galerie Nationale Indonesia, and it was entitled Self-Portrait as a Hypocrite, a great title, which quotes one of Tisner's performance works. And our third very valued and honored speaker is Dolorosa Sinaga, who will also be, with one of her works, part of the Berlin exhibition of collecting entanglements and embodied histories, as well as in all the other 3 exhibitions. The work we are showing at each exhibition is Solidaritas. Maybe we talk about this later on. Dolorosa is a renowned Indonesian sculptor, and in 1977, she graduated from the Faculty of Fine Arts at the Jakarta Art Education Institute, which is now the Jakarta Institute of Art. And in 1980, Dolorosa continued her education at St. Martin's School of Art in London. And after returning to Indonesia, she has been actively teaching at the Jakarta Institute of Arts. She served as a dean of the Faculty of Fine Arts there from 1992 to 2000. And Dolorosa's work show her concern for social and cultural issues as well, and which also includes religious faith crisis, solidarity, multiculturalism, women's struggle, and human rights. And one of her public art works, a monument, is the Spirit of 66 monument in Kuningan in South Jakarta. And in 1987, Dolorosa founded Sommerlying Studio, which is dedicated to managing and educating print specialists, sculpture, coloring, and model experts, as well as for anyone interested in learning about sculpture. Dolorosa has joined many international exhibitions in the United Kingdom, in the Philippines, in Italy, in the US, in Bulgaria, in India, and also, which is interesting for our for Grace Zambo's exhibition of the Collecting Entanglements program, which is opening in June. Dolorosa also was in the art exhibition of the non-aligned countries at the Galerie Nationale in Indonesia. And she's one of the founders of the Indonesian Art Coalitions. And this year just opened last week. Dolorosa is the artistic director of the Jakarta Biennale under the title ESOC. And congratulations again on this really challenging program in this times, and the amazing works you brought together. And yeah, I wish I could see it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all for joining us. And I would say, without further ado, I would like to ask Chenju to start with your presentation.
All right, thanks, Katrina. Yeah, nice to meet everyone. Under such times, of course, in times of COVID, we're all stuck at home. We can't really travel. Maybe in the past, we will fly to each other and maybe have this face to face. But I suppose with technology, it's brought about common usage of Zoom. All right, not ideal, but I think it cuts down on our carbon footprint. So that's good, and we're able to do this. So thanks to you, Katrina, and of course to June, all right, from the Singapore Art Museum for inviting me. And I think I want to give a shout out to Nina and her team, admin team in Jakarta. And of course, I'm also here to learn from Tisna and Dolo as well. So, okay, I'll just do a very short presentation. I think I'm more interested in the Q&A and the discussion among us. So the team or the focus on Käthe Kollwitz, and I'm going to focus on Käthe Kollwitz in Singapore. So maybe you can just show the slides first. So of course, to contextualize this, we all started, of course, with this current collaboration between 4 museums, the collection, Collecting Entanglements and Embodied History. And of course, the Singapore version of it in that sense is the gift, all right, which is organized by Singapore Art Museum, held at the National Gallery of Singapore from 20th August and just ended on 7 November, all right, earlier this month. And of course, you know, to see it, you have to go to the National Gallery in Singapore. And National Gallery, of course, has many other exhibitions, permanent exhibitions, as well as special exhibitions. And in fact, if the timing is just right, while you go down to the National Gallery to look at the gift, you'll see another exhibition called Something New Must Come Up, which is done by curators of National Gallery, focusing on 4 post-1965 Singaporean artists, 1965 being the year that Singapore gained independence. And that exhibition was from 7 May all the way to 22nd August. So it's very possible that you could have seen both exhibitions at the same time, all right, on those few days. So I'll return back to this point later on, but maybe we can have the next slide. So the idea, this is actually the key. I mean, Käthe Kollwitz did so many, of course, woodcuts, sculptures, prints, images, but I'm focusing on this one called, of course, The Sacrifice, 1923. Of course, came out of personal tragedy, comment on World War I, all right, very famous. But I also want to talk about sacrifice. You know, in a way, sacrifice is like gift, right? You're gifting to someone, all right? When you sacrifice, you're actually giving a gift to someone else. So I'd just like to link these two concepts together, and in a way, how Käthe Kollwitz also give to us, all right, with ideas about socialism or social realism, about social action, anti-war messages, and how it arrived, in a way, travel from Germany to China to Singapore. All right, so it arrived in Singapore via China. So we can have the next slide. Okay, of course, this is not done by Käthe Kollwitz. So this is actually quite a modern interpretation of an event that happened in Shanghai in August 1931. It was done by Gan Zhenlu in 1981. All right, basically the artists in the 80s, early 80s, sort of did a woodcut. All right, a print of Lu Xun and Uchiyama, all right, at the woodblock printing class. So what happened in August 1931, all right, the literary giant, Chinese literary giant Lu Xun, you might have, of course, heard of him, writer of books, basically a social critic, all right, who believe in social action and not just using words, but using art as well. And art meaning here woodcuts, even cartoons, to in a way push the people, all right, whereby art is not just for art's sake, but art for society. Art is to change mindset. And China, of course, was in that sense under semi-colonial status in the 20s and 30s, all right, in that sense bullied by the Western powers, and of course later on Japan. So he was very interested in all these art forms, and he organized a 6-day workshop, all right, in Shanghai in August, where 13 participants received instruction on the art of woodblock printing, okay? And of course, what's interesting about Lu Xun is that he spoke German, all right? And he used to visit this Zeitgeist bookshop in Shanghai, which is a small left-wing establishment ran by a German communist, Irene Wittemeyer, all right? And according to the records, it's at North Suzhou Road, which is now the Suzhou Beilu. And basically, you know, he would go there and talk to friends and fellow travelers, all right, about left-wing ideas, about woodcuts, about social realism, about the role of art in society, all right? And in fact, why I chose to talk about the sacrifice, because that has personal significance to Lu Xun, all right? Because Lu Xun was introduced to the works of Käthe Kollwitz by a fellow writer, a friend of his called Ruoshi, all right, who was a left-wing writer. I suppose he was even more extreme in that sense than Lu Xun. All right, he was captured and executed by Kuomintang in 1931, 7 Feb 1931. So in a way to commemorate his friend Ruoshi, who was executed, and Ruoshi was a very pious son to his own mother. All right, Lu Xun actually dedicated sacrifice, all right, to the memory of Ruoshi, and actually in a way worked with Ting Ling, who's the editor of this journal called Beidou, translated as Big Tipper. They put it on a cover, all right? And this is the first issue of Beidou. So in that sense, I'm trying to draw a link between Käthe Kollwitz, Lu Xun, and some of the things, some of the political and social happenings in Shanghai, all right? And of course, basically, Lu Xun, being a big admirer of Käthe Kollwitz, also worked with others, including this American journalist called Agnes Smartley. And in July 1936, he put out 21 prints of Käthe Kollwitz, and so we published that. So that is the situation in China, and it did not just restrict itself to China, all right? And as you know, the history of China and Singapore is closely related, all right? The history of overseas Chinese. Can I have the next slide? All right. So you'll see that basically many Chinese writers, all right, artists were influenced by Lu Xun. Right? Like I say, he's a giant. And one of them, I'll argue, is actually this writer called Tai Ying-lang, who actually was born in Malaya in 1907 in the capital of Kuala Lumpur. But like many overseas Chinese, he went back to China to further his education. He studied at the Shanghai Art Academy. He graduated from its Western Art Department. And I've not found evidence, but I suspect he might have attended the woodcut workshop organized by Lu Xun, or even visited the exhibitions put up by Lu Xun on woodcuts. All right. And in 1935, Tai Ying-lang returned to Singapore and in that sense become a literary person involved in the arts. All right. He was involved in many art societies. He was involved in many events. But more significantly, in 1936, May 1936, he was invited by Nanyang Sanpao, one of the two leading newspapers, Chinese newspapers back then, to start a supplement, an art supplement. And he named it Wen Man Jie, all right? Loosely translated as the world of culture and cartoons, which is very interesting, right? You could call it the world of culture and art, but he chose the word cartoons. And I think this is because he's inspired by Lu Xun's concept of sister art, 姐妹艺术, and Lu Xun has this idea that, of course, you can use paintings, you can use poetry. I suppose sculpture is a bit difficult, all right, given the need for production, all right. But he advocated mass media, all right, meaning cartoons and woodcuts as a way of motivating and mobilizing the people. So they call it sister art. All right, this is something which Lu Xun have advocated and written about. And I believe Tai Ying-lang took these ideas when he returned to Singapore, and he set up, and the name Wen Man Jie said, all right. And in this particular issue of Wen Man Jie in July 1936, all right, I believe this is the first exposure to Singapore, people in Singapore, of Käthe Kollwitz's work. And this article is written by Ke Lun, all right, a writer invited by Tai Ying-lang to write about Käthe Kollwitz. And you can see all these classic images. Apologies, that it's not so clear. I had to take it from, all these images we had to retrieve from the archives, all right, from the microfilm. All right, so although Wen Man Jie was short-lived, only from May 1936 to December 36, all right, its impact was immense on the history, not just the art history, but also cartoon history, woodcut history of Singapore. Not surprisingly, Tai Ying-lang was a communist. He was a member of the Malayan Communist Party. And in 1939, he was banished, all right, by the British authorities from Singapore. He returned to China in 1949, and he went on to become an art teacher in Hangzhou, passing away in the 1980s. All right, so I'm just giving you a brief example of how Käthe Kollwitz arrived in Singapore and really had a big impact on social activism in that sense in Singapore. And I'm going to jump forward, the next slide. All right, where after World War II, all right, just as Singapore moved towards independence, all right, in the 60s, all right, you have many examples of art catalogs, of magazines, which put Käthe Kollwitz on its cover. All right, so the one on the left is art catalog, art magazine of Nanyang Academy of Fine Arts. The one on the right is Genyun, all right. Basically, is about this imagery of farming, this imagery of really harvesting, all right, and shaping the minds of the next generation, all right. So the images are very appropriate. Although of course the one on the right is really almost like a Charles Dickens, Oliver Twist situation, all right. But really about some of the social ills in society back then, all right. And it was done, of course, in Germany in 20s, 30s, but it was relevant in Singapore in the 1950s and even the 60s. Next slide, please. All right. So on the left is another issue of Genyun. All right. And on the right is a magazine of a secondary school, of a high school in Singapore. So even high schools, senior high schools in Singapore, all right, back then was in that sense more politicized, especially among the Chinese students. All right. So I was saying, in that sense, what's happening in China had a big impact on Singapore. All right. China turned communist in 1949. It was seen as a moment of pride where they throw down the shackles of colonialism or semi-colonialism. All right. Indeed, inspire many young Chinese, all right, in Singapore, Malaya, and other parts of Southeast Asia. So what's interesting about the magazine cover on the right is actually, of course, it's a bit small, but you can see that it's Lu Xin, all right, talking to some friends or students. But the war on the wall actually is Käthe Kollwitz's prints, all right. So it's sort of combining the two histories together, right? That's why this is a very interesting image. So what I've done, of course, is to show the history of woodcuts, a very brief history, and of course using Käthe Kollwitz as the link. All right. But as I said, I think many have forgotten. I mean, also for political reasons, much of this left-wing history is so left out of mainstream historiography in Singapore. Only in recent times, we have more of that surfacing, but if you have studied history like me, all right, in the 80s, all right, you don't find the textbooks at all, all right? But even then, I would say that knowledge of Käthe Kollwitz, unless you're an art student, is limited, okay? So can I have the next slide? So it's interesting that we have this current project, all right, collecting entanglements and embodied histories, which remind us of the link, all right, between us and Käthe Kollwitz, and of course, at the SAM show, the gift, all right, courtesy of Guo Guanghao, all right, he sort of resurfaced two shows in June 1991 at the Old National Museum Art Gallery, all right, and one, of course, is of Joseph Boy, but of particular interest to this talk is on Käthe Kollwitz engravings and sculptures, all right, and even back in the 90s, right, early 90s, this recall of socialism is very strong. Next slide, please. All right, and okay, on the left is a photograph of the event of the exhibition back in 91. This I would think is a rather impressive bust of Käthe Kollwitz. But what June and her team had done, of course, is to show these photographs together with solidarity. All right, so this on the right is a photograph that I took when I visited the show. All right, and this photograph and solidarity, they were put together. All right, so again, making that very strong link of social action. All right, and even, of course, I suppose in that sense, the changing role of women. Okay, but to me, when we experience art, it's not just through, well, I suppose many of us experience art through the internet these days, all right, or Wikipedia, or catalogs, better still, that'll be better, printed materials. But actually, I think we best experience art through the galleries, through the museums. And I'm trying to imagine that, if we had visited the gift, all right, when it first opened in August, and we walk around the National Gallery, we'll see other things, all right? And can I have the next slide? we'll see other things. And indeed, when I was walking around after viewing the gift, I went upstairs to take a look at just walk, all right. And I went upstairs to take a look at the permanent collection, all right. And this is the Southeast Asian section, and I noticed these two images, which of course I've seen them before, but in a way, after seeing Käthe Kollwitz, seeing solidarity, it sort of put some of these things in new light. And I was thinking about the portrayal of women, all right, in colonial art, as well as not contemporary South Asian art, but a response to that by Southeast Asian artists. So the one on the left, all right, is of course by a French artist, a very colonial point of view, almost a male colonial gaze, all right, where the women is portrayed as happy. In a way, it was described as sensual and inviting, all right, and it's very idyllic where the past is stuck in time, all right, that there's no volatility, there's no change, as compared to the artwork on the right, which is done by Vietnamese, I think it's a Vietnamese artist, all right, whereby it's another marketplace, all right, but the people are at work, the women are at work, okay, and in that sense, it's not static, all right. So of course, more research need to be done, on Käthe Kollwitz's influence on Southeast Asia. And of course, later on we'll learn from Tisna and Dolo as well. But we can surmise that, in that sense, the arrival of Käthe Kollwitz had an impact on how women are portrayed, or even on women artists themselves, right? In terms of social consciousnness, art, social realism, or even the anti-war message, all right? And this is where I would imagine that, let's say I've seen the gift in the basement of National Art Gallery, and I walk up and I look at this permanent collection, and I walk some more, and I decide to go to a collection that had Chen Shokin, all right, and she was one of the artists featured in Something New Must Come Up. Can I have the next slide? And Shokin actually is a very interesting, and I will also say that she's in a way a direct link between what Käthe Kollwitz was trying to do and in the 1970s and 80s. Of course, in the 50s, as I've shown the magazine covers just now, there were woodcut artists at work, all right, and anti-colonial, social realism, social action. But I would say for that group of artists, that there also was a strong male gaze, all right. Maybe just to give an example, I didn't put it up here, like Tan Tichi, he has a very, very good piece called Dark Alley, which is about prostitution in Singapore. But in a way, if you are critical about it, all right, it is from a male point of view, all right. So that male gaze is still there. So there's always this debate, right? If you are attacking yellow culture, how do you actually portray yellow culture? All right. How do you avoid sensationalizing or even in a way sexualizing the female body? All right. So I think there's a tension there in comics as well as in woodcuts. And this is where Shokin's work is interesting. All right. Okay, maybe just to give a bit of a background of Shokin, she definitely know the work of Käthe Kollwitz because she did a BFA thesis on modern Chinese woodcut in China when she studied the Hill College of Higher Education in 1979. So she started out as a Chinese teacher, all right, teaching in Chinese schools. Then she got scholarship, or she went to further studies in the UK. All right, so she definitely know that whole connection, the whole social message in Käthe Kollwitz's work. And later on in the 80s, all right, she went to the US for her postgrad studies. And this is where she did very political work in that sense to me. All right, on the left is the Boat People series, of course, commenting on the boat people, what happened to people in Vietnam, in Cambodia as a result of the war. All right, and when she was in the US, she also participated in anti-war activities. The one on the right is a photograph. It's an interesting photograph of her being involved in this call against US intervention in Central America in 1984. All right, it was organized by Lucy Lippard. Right, so she was very involved in all this, and her work reflects that as well. And even later on, when she was a fellow at the Vermont Studio Center in 2003, she protested against the US invasion of Iraq, all right, together with other artists. So you could see that you can make an argument that she's inspired by Käthe Kollwitz, all right, and I'm trying to draw the link there, all right? And the link is even within the National Gallery itself, when at one point, the GIF and exhibition on Seok Tin was concurrently held at the same time. And right, and Seok Tin was concerned about the portrayal of women, was concerned about how women was portrayed, and for example, or how they are remembered. So, for example, she did a series on Samsui women many years ago. All right, again on these early female pioneers of Singapore. All right, so these are just some examples. Next slide. Okay, so I think this is my last slide. Of course, if you know the life of Seok Tin, basically she lost her sight in 1988. She was almost 100% blind due to accident, but she continues to pursue in drawing art, commenting on social issues, and of course with much difficulty. And she had to change her style. And this actually was done 2 years after the accident, where I mean, this is a print, a woodcut print, and she played with light, darkness, lines, thickness. So this is a self-portrait. And in a way, sometimes when I look at this, it also reminds me of the sacrifice. All right, it's different context, but the pain, the anguish, and maybe even the confusion is there. All right. So I hope that this just short presentation about Käthe Kollwitz in Singapore, and try to draw links with Singapore art, Singapore art history. We can have a discussion on this later. Thank you.
So thank you very much, Cheng Zhu, and for this really condensing all your knowledge in this short presentations. And I would again like to recommend to go and look up your papers, which, for example, Fragments of the Past, Political Prints of Post-War Singapore, where you will find a lot of more information about what Cheng Zhu just condensed in this very short presentation. Thank you for this. And I just wanted to mention this again, or refer to what you just cited, this exhibition of Beuys and Käthe Kollwitz in 1991 at the National Museum, Art Museum in Jakarta. And I just wanted to say that Beuys, who of course was also featured there, was, of course, on the other hand, very much looking towards the East, especially East Asia, like Japan, and in specific, he was very closely working with Nam June Paik, who will soon have a solo exhibition also at the Singapore Art National Gallery. And they founded together Fluxus, and of course Beuys also made a lot of projects together. So there was a mutual exchange between, very vivid mutual exchange between the, how could you say it, between Asia and Europe, between Germany and German artists and artists in Singapore, in Jakarta, in Indonesia, in Thailand, in Singapore, in Indonesia. And and I would now like to move on maybe to our next presentation, which would be by Dolorosa, if that's okay. Are you ready, Dolorosa, that we start with your presentation, or should we start with no, with Tisna? Let's start with Tisna now. Okay, sorry for mixing this up. Should we move on to Tisna? Tisna, bist du bereit? Fangen wir mit deiner Präsentation an jetzt? Ja? Tisna? Okay.
Terima kasih.
Thank you.
Terima kasih.
Thank you, Kate. Thank you, Katharina. Anna-Catharina Gebbers, or Cat. Good afternoon. I am going to start my presentation that I have prepared.
Apakah suara saya terdengar?
Can you hear me clearly?
Selamat sore.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen.
Mudah-mudahan
I hope
dalam keadaan sehat,
we're all healthy.
walafiat, dan terima kasih buat
And thank you very much
Institut yang sudah
to Goethe-Institut
membuat inisiatif ya,
who had this initiative this afternoon.
sekali
I am so happy
kalau dilibatkan dalam
to be involved in this creative process
Jerman.
with the art and culture of German. I am always interested in art and culture in Germany because perhaps there is something magical that is spiritual.
Hal yang hubungannya dengan logika,
So not only using logic
bukan mungkin ya.
that is so fixed. So first time I went to Germany was in 1987.
Waktu itu
And
di sana anak
when I was there, my son was born and I planted a tree.
kalau di Jerman ada tradisi
In Germany, you had this tradition to plant a tree when we have when a child was born. So my professor and I planted a tree by the side of the lake in Braunschweig.
hadiahkan untuk kota.
And this was gifted to the city of Braunschweig.
Namanya anak
It is Zico tree because my son is called Zico. My wife is Molly. So I am so happy
harus bicara.
when I have to talk or invited by Goethe-Institut today,
Karena ada selalu
because
ada hubungan ya. Secara
there is always this spiritual relation or link with Germany because my son was born there and I planted the tree there.
kemarin anak saya
And
Ziko
yesterday, my son Zico had his second baby. So it's a baby boy.
jadi hari ini semacam
So today
selamat
it's like a gathering. It's like a happy gathering with Käthe Kollwitz,
sebagai doa
a ceremony of sorts. I hope this event can be a prayer, especially to Käthe Kollwitz and her family. I hope they are happy in a beautiful heaven now, and also to my son and my grandson who was just born yesterday. I hope they're all happy and healthy. Can you hear me?
dan kawan-kawan.
Everyone, can you hear me?
Halo,
Yes, we can hear you. Thank you.
sinyalnya mungkin jelek.
Thank you
Terima
and
kasih. Baik.
congratulations
Saya-
on the birth of your grandson. That's amazing. I didn't know this. Congratulations.
Ya, terima kasih.
Yeah,
Senang
thank you very much.
Senang sekali ya.
Yeah, I'm so happy
Senang sekali lah pokoknya.
and I am really happy. Thank you very much, Kate and everyone.
Jadi saya kemarin malam sambil
So
menunggu
last night, while waiting for my grandson to be born, I prepared
tulisan
this
yang
presentation inspired by Käthe Kollwitz, and it's so sad to see how her life was full of tragedy. Her son died because of bomb during the war. So we should stay alert in life.
inilah Käthe Kollwitz,
This is Käthe Kollwitz,
inspirasi saya
who's always been an inspiration to me since I studied in Germany, along with Joseph Beuys too. They were source of my inspiration.
hari ini saya bicara
And today I'm talking about Käthe Kollwitz, and some time ago I have talked about Joseph Beuys because 100 years of Joseph Beuys was also celebrated. We have the commemoration in Indonesia initiated by Goethe-Institut and along with Käthe Kollwitz now. And we had the exhibition in several places in the world. I think those two artists are the two artists whose works are always coming from conscience, and they are artists with visions in their lives. And Käthe Kollwitz, when I read about her and I reflected, her print art is not only for her personal life, although personally she did this also as a contemplation. However, the works, just as Jung-Jun has said, it's true. There is this vision for the community. I'm not going to read this. This is the brief biography of Käthe Kollwitz. I'm writing a lot here about Käthe Kollwitz, but I'll move on to my reflection about Käthe Kollwitz, which I wrote here as an homage to Käthe Kollwitz, as a prayer, not only for Käthe Kollwitz, but also for the safety of the world, the earth, that now is in this pandemic situation. And I think this is still contextual. What Käthe Kollwitz voiced at the time is still relevant now. It's a little bit difficult, I think, when I'm trying to move to the next slide. It's a little bit difficult. Oh, now I can see. This is the next slide. So I show here a portrait about Käthe Kollwitz. And yeah, please move on. Next. And this is Käthe Kollwitz's work. She had a variety of works in terms of the techniques, lithography, woodcuts, very strong in terms of the technicalities and the theme. We can move on. This is her print art that became a poster. So print art is not only for print art itself. Art is not only for art itself, but art also as cultural movement. And this is a poster that was published in a newspaper. Please, next. And this is as well in Leipziger Volkszeitung. So the print art of Käthe Kollwitz, apart from being a strong artwork as a personal expression, this is also a collective work for the collectives, and has provided an inspiration for art movement, for social movement that bring benefits to civilization, to humanity. And here, Käthe Kollwitz's print artwork is very strong, as I said before, in terms of the technicalities, the exploration of etching techniques, lithography and woodcuts, with strong contextual work, considering or responding to the social political situation at the time. And the print art, her print art, is not only beneficial and inspiring for her time, but are still contextual until now. Wherever we are, it is still relevant, and it is a universal work, rejecting the cruelty of war and weapons that victimize humanity and the nature. And this was published in the local newspaper at the time, Nie Wieder Krieg. And the works about the war that turned the world into a chaos. That also she also experienced this in her own family, because in the First World War, her son Pietà died because of the cruelty of the war. This is also her work. I don't have to explain this, but visually you can see this has inspired a lot of artists in different parts of the world, including in Indonesia. If you see the works of Dolorosa Sinaga, we have this dialogical link with the works of Käthe Kollwitz as works that side with issues of humanity, of children, of women, and so forth. And this is print art with the etching techniques, and then colored with tint, so tinted with crayons. This is a work in a series of Käthe Kollwitz print art about violence that had taken place in the war. And this is also the beauty of Käthe Kollwitz artwork with lithography, with woodcut, is grows from art not by beautifying lines, but rather the lines, the etches, and also in the woodcuts, it came from her honest conscience that respond to the bad situation from the greed politics that had the objective to destroy the peaceful humanity. So her art is not only about beauty. So her artwork is dark, blackness that voices the tragedy of humanity. The aesthetics of Kollwitz was born from the exploration of creativity to voice the peace, the values of peace of the world. So Käthe Kollwitz is not talking about pessimistic things, not asking people to die, but from this darkness, she motivates people to move. You can see this from her gesture, from the lines. So the figures that she made in these print works are figures that are stifled, oppressed, vacuous. We feel as a part of the people in this print art that try to go, that are in tension and wishes to go out, wishes to be liberated from the panic that was caused by cruelty of war. And to Käthe Kollwitz print art, especially in lithography and etching that are small in size, it feels intimate because it's small. It's not gigantic, but it's like our body. So you can see the gesture of the body, like a mother holding children, like we're holding the lithograph, like we're holding the etches, the woodcuts. So in terms of the gesture, in terms of our body, we are very close to Käthe Kollwitz artworks, and it is very intimate to our lives. And in the lithography print art, in the theme of war and the mothers hugging their children, you can feel the anger and prayer and sadness of Kollwitz, and as our own prayers and the inspiration of Käthe Kollwitz print artwork until now, when we have this tragedy of global pandemic. I think her artworks are still contextual and can be used as a reference, as an artwork that restore our logic as a mana, as that provides alleviation for our sadness. The essence of Käthe Kollwitz artwork are the creativity of an artist that never gives up to have this resistance, aesthetic resistance that is very characteristic, responding to the greed and the malice of a group of people. During this global pandemic, we are grateful that we can learn from a strong artist like Käthe Kollwitz that never gives up voicing the values of peace for the good of humanity until the end of her life. The values that we can get from Käthe Kollwitz's art stance is that she has provided an ethical foundation as an artist siding with humanity.
Kekuasaan yang mengakibatkan
with the human rights, because of the in relation to liberation, freedom that has taken so many lives. And the tragedy of humanity is still going on in many forms, whether this is because of the war on behalf or in the name of religion, ideology. And there is also the tragedy of how environment is damaged because of the political hegemony and capitalism that ignores the local wisdom and undermines the spiritual tradition, and the destruction of the values of commonality. This is the face of civilization, which becomes a source of anxiety for artists like Käthe Kollwitz. The energy, the spirit of the Käthe Kollwitz artworks, just like in the print work, in the poster of Nie Wieder Krieg, we have to continue this as the ideal of artists, or a model of artist that is strongly says her resistance to war, her rejection of war. And Käthe Kollwitz's art teaches us to stay alert in facing these changes in the world. We as artists, as contemporary artists, are grateful and honored to have an icon of strong artists like Käthe Kollwitz in voicing the expression of peace. I hope Käthe Kollwitz and her family is resting in peace eternally in heaven. Nie Wieder Krieg. I hope Käthe Kollwitz is resting in peace in the world, in the heaven, and print art as an inspiration of social changes, social movement. I have been inspired by Käthe Kollwitz, and also non-artists in Germany, as in Europe, and especially in Germany, because I studied there. And when we link this with the condition in Indonesia, I think they have a universal value. I learned in Germany about print art, as Kat explained, and these are my print art in the 1980s during the New Order era, Suharto's era, and these works were also become a part of the movement at the time. These are etching, and I showed you some of the print works using etching and body print as a medium to respond to the changes in the social, political, and cultural situations. These works were made in 1987 when I was studying in Germany, and the works also became or used as a cover for an underground magazine at the time. And this was a magazine that was rejecting or resisting the banning of magazines, of free press. The leader was Ahmad Taufik, the late Ahmad Taufik. And it was not only my works, it was other artists as well, Nandang Gawe, Heridian. I did not show all the other artists, perhaps on other occasions. I can tell you more about this. What is very interesting in the history of prints in Indonesia, this is Bredel, or the banning of some magazines at the time. This was because they were critical towards the government at the time. And then we made a new magazine, which is the Independent, the underground magazine. This is the Independent magazine.
Nah, tapi sepulang saya dari Jerman,
As I came home from Germany, of course, I did not use the machines that I had in Germany, but the essence of print art is the printing itself. So the machine was not the machine that I had in Germany, but I used my body as the machine. And so I used this, and I also invited others with this body print in public space with the materials that we had in this archipelago, whether this is in terms of the soil, the spices, dust. So these are not only aesthetic medium, but there is this underlying ideas that we would like to say about different things. Next, this is body prints that we did in Jatiwangi Art Factory last time. We had 99 of body prints, and these are the bodies of the citizens, the people in Jatiwangi, that we printed in the clothes of women from my own mom as well. So this is a male body combined with the sarong that is worn by women. So this is a combination, and this is the print work, body print. These are the fabric, the sarong, the female sarong. After we did the body prints in that indoor space, we took it outdoor, and this was the last plot of land that would be marginalized due to the process of change in the area, in the contemporary situation. And the land has been bought by business, by industry, and Jatiwangi Art Factories invited me to make works here, and all the materials here are from the citizens, from the people there. So the cloths, the sarong, and all the materials are from there, from the people living there. This is after we finished. We had this discussion. We chatted with the community members. How are we going to follow this up, whether in terms of art and about their lives there. And the work, hopefully, next year, we have 19 body prints. We can move on. We're going to take this with the Jatiwangi community to Documenta 15 in Kassel. This will be a part of the community to say a statement about art as an energy, the spirit to collaborate. This is also body prints on the prayer mat. This was in Macan, Museum Macan. And this is a response to violence that occurred because of radicalism in the Muslim world. So, because Muslim as the biggest community of biggest part of the population, and we had this prayer mat that we used in prayer to pray. This is amnesia cultura. Similarly, this is also body prints. We can just move on because perhaps the limited time that we have. This is also body prints. This is the next work in the form of performing art, but this is print art, but we expand it as an art performance as a part of the culture. And this is also the war that Käthe Kollwitz was talking about. Her anxiety is still relevant until now. We had suicide bombing in Indonesia by a family. I hope it never happens again, and we can move on. This is suicide bombing
agama
in the name of religion,
atas nama jihad
in the name of jihad, by a family, a mother, the children, and the father.
Surabaya
This took place in Surabaya, and I made this work here
dengan cetak tubuh
with body prints
debu yang
and charcoal and dust. The theme is
ini ya, ibu adalah sumber
mother is the source of life, not death bomb. So that's the essence. Mother is a source of life, not bombing, not death. This is a response towards an incident of a mother and a whole family that became suicide bombers in the name of religion. So this is, I hope, violence in any form, whether this is on behalf of religion or capitalism, and also in our daily lives. I hope this never happens again. I was inspired by Käthe Kollwitz, that is always an inspiration for me. I hope this has this brings benefit to us all during this pandemic era. I hope this makes our life a little bit better. I think that's it for me. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tisma. Vielen Dank for this, for this work biography of Käthe Kollwitz, which was really very insightful, very thick, and also for pointing out how Käthe Kollwitz work was always linking her personal experiences with thoughts or on, let's say, more general ideas of humanity. And also thank you for this insight in your own work practice, which I think is also very similar, like Käthe Kollwitz linking the very personal experiences with the greater political issues and social issues. I think we can discuss this later on more in depth, because I now would like to ask Dolorosa to maybe start her experience. And I also wanted to say thank you to Rana, the Dolmetscher, the translator. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Catherine. Selamat sore, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Who is here joining our discussion? Thank you so much. First, I would like, of course, to thank you, to address my grateful to Anna and to the organization of this exhibition. It's a long title, but I want to say Collecting Entanglements and Embodied Histories. Thank you so much for giving me a chance to participate in this exhibition. I think my personal opinion of this exhibition should be like, you know, closing this year, despite the pandemic, I guess the exhibition is very important to close this year. This is a kind of reflection to what is happening now that we all face, that in commemorating 100 years of Käthe Kollwitz, we can see that our civilization is not going anywhere. I mean, the whole works of Käthe Kollwitz, it's still resonates in a very strong warning to us. Yeah, this is my statement. So glad that we have opportunity to discuss about her work, how we see her work, and I have to be honest that I met her work when I was a student at St. Martin's School of Art. But before Before that, I remember in my student days at IKJ, my friend Arjuna, who was a student at the musical department and show very much interest in also in art, that there is a strong relationship to see music and visual art in terms of history. So the first time I saw her works, and it it stays in my head. And then when I was a student at St. Martin, I went to the library and looked for her books. And also I was very fortunate that I was able to go to Stuttgart, and I was there for the opening of her small gallery. And in my student days in London also, there was a big retrospective, I guess, of the whole prints of Käthe Kollwitz, which and I have no doubt that she is very much, her spirit is very much in my many of my sculptures. I did many studies of her work, her prints. I did studies of mother and child in many positions, holding a sick child, holding a dead child. And also one of my piece of that studies, I create a new relation, but I'm sorry I didn't show it here for you, but let me just explain that from the ideas, from the inspiration I got from Käthe Kollwitz, I enlarging my ideas how to see the relationship of mother and child. Can we see the slides, please? The pictures. Now I have five pictures to show you. This is the report 2019. This is it. Up until the 2019, I still making some studies of Käthe Kollwitz, and I also have another hands of this woman holding a paper which is symbolizing an idea, a concept, or probably manifest, call it whatever you like, but it's a statement. And then the left hand is up, rising up to the sky, and in bahasa Indonesia you call it berlawan, to fight. Second, please. So this word is from the real what should I call it? In 2000 to 2005 in Jakarta, there were so many resettlement, and it was done by military force, using military force. Now I got so depressed seeing all this news on telly, and also in media, social media. So I decided to do a sculpture that this woman, even though they were shouting the power that forced them to go out from their place, one of them still standing and trying to protect their place. But also you can see, all they have to, they cannot carry all their belongings, only what they need, like, from frying pan and a bunch of clothes. And I guess that's all. Well, this is it. We will fight. The third, please. Now, I'm not sure what you think of this statue when you see it, but let me tell you something. I've been, for a long time, I've been longing to think that probably we artists, we should get in acquainted with military, so that we should be able to share what we think about art with them, because all they know is a weapon. All they know is to do instruction. But probably we should let them know how to read a poem, or how to read, give them paper and give them pencil, try to make a drawing, or try to write their emotion of their life. It's something that I have in mind, that I wanted to do it. So I end up making two figures. One is military, and a woman that trying to show and asks, have you read the Book of Love? You see both of the face is looking at each other with a different expression, but it shows that we need to make a good relation with the army, with the military. So probably through art, through creativity, that they can envision their life, not only looking or having lived in uniform and with the guns, but they can see other things in life. Next. Now, this is, you just saw this prints when Tisna presented the many prints of Käthe Kollwitz, which is very comprehensive in a way. But this is how I did it. This is my interpretation. And I remember doing this with very what should I call it? I was really carried out with full of emotion with this. I love this piece. Next. This is another homage to Käthe Kollwitz. Next is solidarity. Give me 1 or 2 minutes to explain this piece. I'm not sure. You probably would read an explanation of this piece from Junha, one of the curator of this exhibition, or Sambo, Grace Sambo. But this piece intentionally made for the 98 tragedy, which is Up until now, the government would not acknowledge that this mass rape was happening at that time. Up until now, they wouldn't, they would not let this, what you call it, this case be open to public and acknowledged by the government that it was true. So what I did is all these women as the victim of the mass rape, I give them life again. I give space for them to stand up together, shoulder to shoulder, hands in hands, and they are forcing out to the world, and they were saying that we will not be defeated. And every time if I saw this piece, I got very emotional. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Dolo. It's the same with me and us and everyone. We all get very emotional when seeing this piece, and which of course reminds us of this, what happened, and that's the reason why we've chosen this work to be included in all 4 exhibitions that we have, because it has this strength, and even if you don't know about the actual incident, you feel the emotion behind that and the strength. And yes, and I also wanted to say thank you also for pointing out this the way how art could really have a very direct approach to people and make them think and feel and create emotions, which is very much in your work as well, and which was very much also the case, of course, with Käthe Kollwitz. And thank you so much for this. And yes, and I would now like to perhaps open the discussion again with all of us to be invited, and maybe let's start with Nie Wieder Krieg, Never Again War, which is a very iconic work created by Käthe Kollwitz in 1924, and which was personally inspired or drawn from this life-changing experience of losing her younger son Pietà in World War I, and but also this work represents the artist's attitude about nation as part of one's cultural identity, and how this experience made her rethink about nationalism. And I think this was, in a subtle way, also a discussion in the works by Dolorosa. How do we think about community and nation in different ways? And also nation building provides the background for the 4 distinct exhibition between Collecting Entanglements and Embodied History, but this discussion is aiming to put a spotlight on the more personal take of the issue. So this is also the works of Käthe Kollwitz are deeply emotive, and I would always say also reduce things to the essence, or they represent the core of feeling, and so that people are brought together in a way. And in the same spirit, all of you believe in sharing their works or their ideas about works with everyday people through spontaneous performances in public spaces, public monuments, as well as history lessons and comics. And I think this is a very interesting subject I would like to discuss with you, Chengju. Käthe Kollwitz was never interested in la pour la, right? In pure formalism in art, but as Dolorosa also very intensively spoke about, what she wanted was, as she herself wrote, to have an affect. So she said, I want to have an affect. In German, it says, she wrote, Ich will wirken, which means I want to have an effect on people. I want to get people moved. I want my art to have a social influence. And also Käthe Kollwitz made this very conscious decision not to become a painter, but to work in the media of printmaking and drawing. And this is where she saw her potential for being able to make powerful statements. And Chengju, with you, I want to discuss that. It seems interesting. I mean, you talked about wood printing, but you're also an expert in comic. It seems to me interesting that there is a parallel between Käthe Kollwitz's search for the concentration on the essential and the concentration in comic art. I mean, like, for example, Ligne Claire is, of course, one of these very concentrated ones. But I would like to maybe talk about this, you to talk about this a little bit more, if you are up to.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. I mean, just now we are having earlier discussion and you talk about comics, cartoons, and clear lines. And I think in my mind, maybe one of the reasons why Käthe Kollwitz focus on woodcuts, focus on drawings instead of painting is really from her belief or her mission that the art is for the masses. Art is supposed to change people. All right. I'm not to say that her art is ugly. All right. I think aesthetically is still, it's really top notch. All right. But it's really for the people. And this is where you understand that it's all about technology, right? And I think in the 20s, 30s, and even up to 50s and 60s in Singapore, for example, what I realized is that many of the artists drew cartoons, or did woodcuts to supplement, of course, their income, all right? And they may be doing portraits, paintings, and all that. But all those things are actually can only be seen often only in galleries and museums. So there's a limited reach. All right. But when you do woodcuts, when you do cartoons, it's black and white, it's immediate, and it can be used for mass publication in newspapers, in magazines, especially student magazines. All right. And I believe that could be that's the case for Käthe Kollwitz as well. All right. All right. That she wanted to pursue specific medium, all right, for this purpose. I mean, in that sense, sculptures, it could be public sculptures. So in that sense, it's accessible. But if you do a painting, perhaps it's limited reach. So that's why so many of her black and white drawings, woodcuts, continue to proliferate today. All right. I mean, some are supposed legally, some illegally. All those zines, punk zines, they can easily appropriate her images. All right, or the anti-war message. So I think that is really one way of looking at it. All right, to set a context for it. When I was looking at images, I mean, of course, she's not categorized as a cartoonist, all right? And maybe because her life is also quite tragic, all right? There's not much of a humorous slant to it. But I'm sure she's aware of the many cartoonists who were working in Germany in the time, in the 20s and 30s, all right, in the interwar years. And even those who sort of oppose against Nazism and all that. So I'm sure she must be aware of all this, not just in fine arts, but also in mass medium, in popular culture, what's happening. Yeah.
Yeah, I think this is also something which links all of you, that this how to not only being art, something which is shared between people who are going to the museums or even private collections. And I think this is also very much also the point with her public sculptures or sculptures which are now brought into the public sphere. But I would also say that she was very interested in methodologies of printmaking and doing so. And I think this is what Tisna also spoke about a lot. For example, if we are looking, what I'm going to present in Berlin is an excerpt of her Viva cycle. And there, for example, she planned to do the entire series as etchings, but due to, let's say, technical uncertainties, she finally lithographed only the first 3 sheets, and then she executed the last 3 sheets as etchings. So she was really very aware of what she was able to do and how she wanted to do. And she was often working very, very long on the technical skills and how to find out how precisely she could do it. And for example, in the Viva cycle, the 2 introductory sheets describe the causes of the uprisings, and which these were executed, as lithography, which is really interesting. And the 3rd deals with the planning of the revolt. The following ones thematize the outbreak, the climate, and the collapse of the uprising. So it's almost already like it's like a comic strip already, and it's executed in very, or like a scenography for a film, even you could say, which is really interesting. And I would maybe make the link to Tisna at this point of the discussion, because Tisna, you're also working in series of works. So you create a whole body of works that create together a larger cycle of works. Is that right?
Terima kasih, Kat.
Thank you, Kat. I would continue what Jingju said and Dolorosa said. I think it is also related with what I'm doing. I'm a teacher, a lecturer at the Faculty of Art so I'm civil servant, and I have to say about a lot of things about different methods for the creation of art that essentially makes sure that it has an impact, not art just for art, not art for their personal expressions, but how to make sure that art, perhaps it doesn't look like art, but then the energy of the spirit can make an impact in the society. And it is not easy, because we are in the scope, first of all, the social scope or the social world of art that is a little bit stereotypical. And then art education, I think, needs to be changed. We should not just do business as usual. Well, this will be a long discussion, but that's why my friends and I in the university, we do a lot of things. We evaluate with the students, with the lecturers. And now, in 2 days, I'm going to have an exhibition with the lecturers. So the point of departure would be the etching, but that is just one technique. But when they work intensively, when I invite them, invite my friends from painting, from printmaking, from the students, and this becomes a cultural event for change. This is where we are forced to think about all the different things that are happening around us, because printmaking, print art, as an art, we can see the technicalities, but the essence of print, as Käthe Kollwitz said, this is an event of humanity, and we need method, we need courage, we need mission, We need to we need to disseminate this information with different people. And I heard Käthe Kollwitz and Boyce, they did not work alone. They lived in a community in Germany at the time with political parties, with communities that might be not on the same page with her when she became a lecturer in a university. But because she had a vision, the art seeps through everything. And now it persists as the energy, as an energy. That's what Käthe Kollwitz works. So the essence of Käthe Kollwitz works and the overlaps with what I've been doing. Art has to have a vision, not only for the personal expression, because then we can have this one foot in the exploration, in the creative exploration, aesthetic exploration, just as Käthe Kollwitz did as well with her masterful technical aspects in terms of the etching, dry point, the lithography, woodcut. She was a master in those technicalities. But on the other foot, her other foot, she works with other communities to grow, to voice the messages, the anti-war messages, anti-oppression messages, anti-violence messages. So artists like Käthe Kollwitz, they not only work in a studio, but they go out to the world to voice different anxieties, and then they voice this together. I think this is what I would like to say in and about Käthe Kollwitz and the overlap with my works and the creative communities that is occurring now in Indonesia. And this has been very interesting in the process of change that we have at the moment.
Yes.
Could you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you very well. I mean, Dulu, can you hear him?
Yeah.
Okay.
Tisna, kalau bicara dipegang aja.
Tisna, when you talk, can you please hold your mic so we can hear you clearly? When you hold it in front of your mouth, we could hear you better.
Mungkin itu dulu ya.
Thank you. I think that's it from me. Thank you very much. You can continue. Thank you, Kat. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Tisma, also for ignoring my question in regard to your work and being so kind to go back to Käthe Kollwitz again, which is really very kind of you. Because I mean, we're going to see your work at the Documenta in the upcoming year, and I thought you might have talked about this, but now we concentrate on Kollwitz, and thank you very much for going back to this subject. And what you just said, I would also now like to concentrate on how maybe the ways how she is creating this effects of her work. And this is, I think, which we could see very, very clear, for example, in this work, Nie Wieder Krieg, Never War Again, which we were discussing, which was a poster for the Sozialistische Arbeiterjugend, the socialist workers' youth in Leipzig, and where and which is still, I would say, let's say, probably the most known work by Käthe Kollwitz in Germany and everywhere in the world, because it was used by the peace movement in the 1970s and the 1980s. It is used until today. And I would say the reason for this enormous effectiveness is certainly not only to be found in the formal aesthetics, but even more in the way the artist dealt with the subject. But I think it's something that goes together very well. I mean, what you see is, Rangi, maybe we could look at this work. You will find it in my slides. Maybe we could look at Nie Wieder Krieg. Yes. So because what you see is a young man who raises his hand in a, it's the next one, please. sorry, this is, yes. So I'm combining it in the exhibition in Berlin with a poster of a very well-known Indonesian artist called Semsa Siahan, a poster which is dedicated to a union worker, Masina, but on the left line, Masina, but on the left line side, what you see is this poster we were just discussing, Nie Wieder Krieg, Never War Again. And what you see is a young man who is raising his hand in a passionate gesture to swear. His arm is stretched up to fill the entire height of the picture. And his left hand, he's placing on his heart to affirm his, let's say this oath, what he's saying, well, his mouth is open to shout, Nie Wieder Krieg, never war again. And this urgent appeal to which Käthe Kollwitz invites her viewers to identify the viewer with this person has taken an urgent form in the boy. So he's standing, he stands facing sharp in the wind. You can see his hair blowing in the wind. His facial expression, let's say, reveals an extreme tension, and the depiction is complemented, graphically, ideally resolved, I would say, and which is also a reference to our, let's say, our key visual for the overall graphic design for collecting entanglements and embodied history is this handwriting, it is here, it's Käthe Kollwitz's own sweeping handwriting, and the raised arm dominating the picture partly overlaps the word war, Krieg is war, which Käthe Kollwitz has even underlined. So it's this strong gesture again, and she underlined it twice, and thus serves as an exclamation mark at the same time. And let's say, as little as she withdraws her individual signature for a poster, she remains very true to herself in the oath which she is handwriting, Nie Wieder Krieg. And it is precisely in this what the subjective and, I would say, emotional appearance of this anti-war poster may have its effects. And if we go back to Dolorosa's work, which I'm combining in my exhibition in Berlin with a bust by Tina Heim-Wencher, which is depicting Käthe Kollwitz. I think what you can see in this work as well is this emphasis on the hands, on the arms, on the lengthening and the enlarging of the limbs, and also again this concentration on the essence, on the essential of the figures and the statement. I think this makes Dolorosa, your works so powerful also for monuments in the public space, I would say. So I think you also have this concentration on hands, which is something very, very personal. Would you agree on this? I can't hear Dolorosa. Are you talking, Dolorosa? I can't hear you. Sorry.
I totally agree with you, Catherine. But, I was saying that there was one point that I missed at my presentation that I didn't explain. If you see, there's only one pregnant woman in these 7 figures. Okay.
Yes.
So, what does it mean to you? I mean, to me, it means that I wanted to say that right from beginning, that her child in her womb, she is already teaching he or she to fight against injustice. That's the message.
Yeah. Yes, and I think it's very much, I mean, as I think, which is very interesting, what you said is that all this is, and what Tisna also said or pointed out, that in her works, it's a lot of people say it's always revolving around death. So this is the one side of it, but the other side is that this painful or traumatic events are used by her or brought to the foreground in relation to, let's say, to activate, to motivate people, and to not to be depressed, and but to become active, that there is a future, and even if it's the future for children, or if it's a future for people or for younger people, that could learn how we could live together in the future. Tisna, do you want to reply to this, or Chenju? Because we also have
saya senang sekali. Saya ingin
yes,
bicara.
I am very happy. I would like to talk about this work.
Saya sangat setuju dengan apa yang dikerjakan.
I agree, and I really commend what Dolorosa did with this work, responding to the dark situation in the 1998, the tragedy towards women at the time in Jakarta. This was during the shift from the New Order regime to the Reformation regime that took lives, especially women, and especially the Chinese women. And this has not been exposed until now, and the government has been ignorant about this. And art is able to say clearly, to voice this clearly. So not only clearly in terms of the metaphors, but also universally. And Katharina also perceives this.
Menyentuh, ya.
And in a very touching way. And I agree that this type of work is presented in a public space. And when the government is ignorant, when art is able to voice this, and we have to keep on voicing this, and we have to voice this to the public to make sure that there is change from this violent situation, and we make sure that this violent incident never happens, because art is like a prayer, like an intense prayer, just like what Dolorosa is doing, like Käthe Kollwitz did. This was a form that we can perceive. And even Katharina, you're able to perceive this, and also other friends. I think we have to say this, we have to express this when the government has been ignoring and closing their minds, their eyes, and their heart. Thank you very much, Tisna. Thank you, Dolorosa. Thank you very much, Tisna.
I think I'll just add one comment, is that I think that the trauma is not just what happened in 97, 98, but also what happened in Indonesia in 65, 66. I think this is where the art of Käthe Kollwitz is universal, and it can be applied to different time period as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
So maybe we have a question from Dianto. Maybe I can read it to you. He says in our chat, he says, as one of the exponents of the Neue Sachlichkeit movement, which was a movement in the 1920s, Käthe Kollwitz seems not only to possess her particular experience as a modality in formulating political intentions. Could it be because she strongly believes in the power of the dramatic and poetic as an attempt to transcend political pragmatism in art? I think this is what we just discussed, right? That there, and as also the Neue Sachlichkeit was a movement which was, after Expressionism, returned to more realistic figurative things. And this was, of course, very much in line with what Käthe Kollwitz wanted to do. She was not interested in l'art pour l'art, in just art for formal experiences, but for getting in touch with people, and also to talk within her realistic works about reality, but also about a reality which is perhaps hidden in what is perceived as reality. So there is also this always a sub comment in her works as well. And I think this is what we all perceive as something which is this eternal language of hers, which she has, that you can always get in touch with her, what Tisna just pointed out very much in his last comment, right? Dianto, is your question answered now? I don't know. If there is another question from Dianto who's referring to Neue Sachlichkeit. So I only wanted to point out in regard to Neue Sachlichkeit that Käthe Kollwitz was always doing realistic work. She also in the 19th century, and when you talk about the relation to drama or to poetry, for example, this very iconic cycle of hers, the Viva's Revolve, was inspired by a drama by Gerhard Hauptmann, which was premiered in Berlin in 1893, and which was very soon, let's say, censored in a way because the government saw its potential to influence people. And I think this is something which is really always interesting when governments censor art. So they fear art, which is, I think, a very interesting point. The power of art is the most recognizable when it's censored by someone. So we have more comments. Should I read it to you? Dolorosa, are you already reading this?
I'm reading it from Wawan Setiawan, right?
Yes. So it says, thank you, Käthe Kollwitz Spirits has been reborn within the youth. Thank you, Tisna also, and beauty and conscience are eternal and universal. Very nice. The deep sorrow of Käthe Kollwitz has been expressed in her grandeur works of arts in 2 as well as 3-dimensional artworks. And her energy is alive ever. So this is a very beautiful comment by Vavan Sityavan Hussein. Mother is the beloved, and he says here, well, I love your deep reflection. Thanks to Dolorosa Sinaga. And Käthe Kollwitz Spirit is in Sinaga's works in a sincere and humble of confession of Dolorosa's works. And in other words, Käthe Kollwitz has become an inspiration for Sinaga. I think it would be my comment. It is one of the inspirations you have, and Vavan Sityavan sees a strong, vital elan in hers, which are expressions open and straight in the core of problems, a similar openness, creative energy being conveyed in the works. And for Vavan, the beauty of the works are there both in Käthe Kollwitz's works and Dolorosa Sinaga. So this is thanks to Dolorosa's works. They are both narrative and poetic. Thank you. And we are all deeply involved in emotionally, I think energetically as well, but nothing but agree. So thank you very much for this comment. And
a question for all of us.
Yeah, what is art for you, the first one, and the second one, what is the function of art in the era of the 21st century? So, and I think we already touched these two questions, but maybe it's a very good, let's say, closing remark for our panel, which is, of course, called The Power of Art. And I think one of the questions I answered is, of course, if art is, for me, if art is touching and moving, and on the one hand, on the personal level, on the other hand, if it's censored by people, it's clear that there is some power of art. And I think this is still very much the case in the 21st century. But I don't want to talk. I hand over those questions to you. And whom of you would like to answer this question first? Maybe Dolorosa, you have to, because this was this long appraisal of your work.
Okay, I'm going to be just,
terhadap karya Anda.
A statement to conclude our discussion. What is art for me? What is the function of art in our 21st century? Okay, the first one is, for me, art for me is what you can enjoy seeing art, and do not against art as an entertainment. It's already here from a long time ago. It's been like that. So do not hesitate to go and see entertainment. It's an art, but the more important thing is to see art to have the power to resist. That is the power of art. So both people should see that to speak up against what are we facing today, where the condition of humanity is at the brink, and there is always art would respond to it and make us getting a new awareness that we all together we can save the life, we can save the earth, and art should be the forefront to give us the hint and to bring up our concern to make a better future, to make a change. So the power of art is to make a change for the better future. Thank you.
Thank you. Terima kasih. So maybe Chenju, what would you say?
Sure.
Because,
yeah, I'll just keep it short. I think the function of art is to really keep us honest, right? And of course, from the honesty, from that inward looking to the outward, and this is back to Dolo's point that then you resist, you do something, you there's activism, but I think it's to keep us honest. And I've been thinking about how important that is in this age of, I don't know, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok, where sometimes things can become very cynical and things get just commodified, right? We have commodified our dissent these days, even among the young people. And I'm hoping that Käthe Kollwitz continue to be in the textbooks in our curriculum, because the examples I gave, 50s, 60s, and even Syoktin, the artist I mentioned, she's a senior artist who have passed away since. So I'm hoping that Käthe Kollwitz will continue to influence young artists, because I think we need more of that. Yeah.
Yes, and I think is what you just mentioned, Twitter and Instagram, the social media. I think another point of the power of art is that you go to if you're going to a museum. I'm not talking about NFTs and internet art or something, but if you go to a museum, this is a very interesting experience that it's not regulated or steered by the algorithm, right? you are still able to experience surprises, right? You come around the corner and there is something that you would never thought that you might get into this, and you can become very, very touched by this. So, this
is why I mentioned in my presentation, right? I was walking around the National Gallery and I saw
exactly
different things and the different connections being made. Yeah.
Exactly, and this is also not only the power of art, but also the power of museums. So I just wanted to include.
True.
So, and Tisna, do you want to add something to this? I'm sure you want.
Ya, saya senang sekali.
Yes, I am so happy. Art, I really like art because I was taught about art by my parents, but in a different form, not only about drawing, but also about art of life. So this is what I learned. So beauty that grows from what we call art formally, not only painting, ceramic, prints, and everything that is formal in the social world of art that we have now. But because I live in different communities, whether this is religious communities, art communities, daily lives, at schools with children. So art is actually creativity. Art is what we can do through creativity. The medium is not limited to the formal medium of painting, prints, or everything that we learn at school. But perhaps when the water is dirty, when the river is dirty, what can we do? What collaboration can we do with different parties in our environment? And we can move each other. When we want to listen others, when we want to listen to others, that is art. When we collaborate, that is art. That is social relationship. So what comes from this is common aesthetics. I think what Pak Wawan said that, in his comment about what is the future of art that we have to grow. Well, we have to grow this attitude, this stance, this honesty, as Cheng Ju said and Dolorosa said. And second, we have to have courage. We have to be courageous in voicing our concerns. And then we have to socialize with anyone. And perhaps not only with those who are common to us, not only with artists, but with different groups of people, with the people in the villages, with different, with the religious communities, with schools. That is the creativity that we have to nurture to voice our stand, our concern, to say our stance. And in this pandemic, art has been questioned and everything has been questioned. Art, technology, religious attitude, economy. And in the future, well, yeah, that is exactly what we need to do. Creativity, listening to each other, sharing experience, just as the what Goethe-Institut has initiated about Käthe Kollwitz. Thank you very much for the invitation. The good thing comes from God, the bad thing comes from me and from Dolorosa Sinaga.
Yeah, I wanted to thank you for this closing words, which is exactly what I wanted to say. I wanted to also thank Goethe-Institut for the support, and I also want to thank to all the other funding institutions for my exhibition. It's, for example, the Kulturstiftung des Bundes, and each of the other exhibitions have their own funders, and we all need this engagement, and we need also, we are depending on all the people we are now not seeing on the screen, which are Maya from the Goethe-Institut, which is Nina from the Goethe-Institut, Rangi, who is operating the screens, and also to Vana, our translator. And I also would like to extend this thank to all the assistant curators who are working with us. For Berlin, it's Charlotte Knaup, for example, and our Goethe fellow Rosalia Namsa Engschön. And I also wanted to say that it's very important what Tisna said. For example, we have all these workers in the museums, and that's what to start with. If they are interested in the exhibitions that we are doing, this is already a very good start. So I'm always talking with the guards in the museum, for example, and I'm always interested in their take on the art. And this is where we have to start, and then also reach out for or invite other communities to come. So it's a very good concluding remark by Tisna, and very engaging and motivating. And thank you all for this very fruitful discussion. Thank you so much.
Katharina,
And
thank you.
Hope to see you all in good health somewhere soon in real life.
See you.
Yes.
Thank
All
you.
right. Hope to
Thank
meet
you.
all you.
Bye.
Bye bye. Bye bye.
Bye.
Thank
Thank
you.
Bye bye. See you. See you.
See you. Bye bye.